Yes, we're back, and we're looking at Ropeways Transport project. Some of us would have seen only in films when you have cable cars, and you associate that with places where it's massive expanse of land. It's not in the cities.
The Alps.
The Alps, yes, the Alps, and places where you see snow and you see massive amount of ice on the grounds, and or the places where there are mountains and you want to have a good scenery and just enjoy the environment, the ambience, and all that. But to see it in the city is not something that a lot of Nigerians will say, oh yeah, I've seen it in this city, or
And
not
to
a
see
lot
it
of
in Lagos.
in Lagos. For it to happen
Wow.
in Lagos sounds like a dream. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Captain Dapo Olumide, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Ropeways Transport Limited. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, good. Now let's start from the very beginning. The idea of bringing cable cars into Lagos. Where did it start from, and how did you come about the idea of bringing it into a major urban place like Lagos?
Actually, the funny thing in life is that the simplest ideas end up as the most practical. Doppelmayr is a cable car company. They manufacture cable cars. It's an Austrian company bordering on Germany. They've been in business since 1892. It's a family business, so Doppelmayr is their surname. Now, Michael Doppelmayr was watching that program on television many years ago. Remember the Michael Gould thing? That there was a documentary on Lagos. And he saw Lagos and the population density and just the sheer number of people, if you watch that series. And he did some research online, and he found out that in a couple of years, according to statistics, that Lagos will be the third largest urban agglomeration in the world, with a population of 25 million. Well, one could argue that we're there already, but we'll come to that later. The population density, again, a mega city, by definition, is a city with 10 million people or more and 2,000 people per square meter or more. So Lagos fits right into that. So Doppelmayr said, this is a no-brainer. If we had something like this in the city of Lagos, you would succeed, even if you did no studies at all. So he approached us, and we said, yes, of course we can do that. You know, I'm from the transport industry, so I can see the logic behind it. And we said, yes, of course it can be done. And it's not going to be a problem. Of course, there are the skeptics and so on, but you expect that in any form of business in this country. But that's where the idea actually came from to do this.
So when you have that idea, did you consider, you've mentioned the numbers, and you will say with numbers is a no-brainer. But is cable car supposed to be a mass transit?
Good question.
Because it's associated more with about 3-seaters and 6-seaters,
Yes.
and it's just for people to have good views and go back and forth.
Well, let me explain it. You're right. But you see, the way the technology has adapted itself now is towards the urban environment. It started off life in ski resorts. Actually, it started off in mining. And up to 100 kilometers of these buckets hanging on a cable, taking the coal or whatever minerals they are from the ground, from where they've been extracted, to the processing plants. That's where it actually started from. But in terms of carrying people, it started in China 1,000 years ago. So it's not new technology. And we call it ropeways because it's not actually rope anymore. It used to be rope. It's actually cable. But we just stick to that old nomenclature.
Cableways then.
Cableways, yes. So the tourism aspect of it is one aspect. Like I said, mining is another aspect. You use cable cars, for example, to take cars off ships when they come into port and move them to where they're going to be stored. You have them in just a form of a bench. But in an urban setting, this started back in the 70s. Don't forget, in New York City, they have a cable car system within New York that has been running since 1974. In Singapore, 1976. So it's not new in an urban environment.
Okay, now I know for a fact that the governor of Lagos State is very passionate about this because he wants to change the look and feel of Lagos State. He wants it to be truly Lagos State. And we understand that you've signed an agreement with LAMATA and Lagos State government recently. What does that agreement really say?
Well, it gives you the basis upon which you can legally and contractually operate. within the city. It's a Lagos state project, not a federal project. And so it gives you the legal framework upon which you can operate. And because it's a transport system, it follows LAMATA, because LAMATA has a law that regulates, like the NCA, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, regulates airlines. LAMATA regulates transportation system in Lagos State.
Especially mass transit.
Especially mass transit. So what happens is that that's why they're a co-signatory to the agreement, because we're operating under LAMATA law.
Okay. So where does this law allow you to apply your business?
Basically, it's a right-of-way. It's a right-of-way issue. It's an aerial right-of-way rather than a surface right-of-way.
Right-of-way.
So it's all about right-of-way issues. But we have selected routes that were not designated by the government, but we presented them to the government based on statistics and feasibility studies and traffic studies. So it's based on that they approved those routes.
So what routes did you have in mind?
There are 3 routes. What we're trying to achieve is we're trying to ameliorate the traffic congestion on the 3 bridges in the northwest of Lagos, then the 2 bridges on the south of the island, linking Victoria Island, and also linking Apapa over the channel to Lagos Island, because it's all about the central business district and moving people to work and back and decongesting the bridges. So we're basically having 3 routes. One is from Apapa to Oluwole, from Oluwole to Adeniyi Adele. Another one is from Ijora 7 up to Ido, from Ido to Adeniyi Adele. The 3rd route is from Victoria Island to Falomo, Obalende, Adeniyi Adele. So basically, Adeniyi Adele is the hub. And those are the 3 routes that we'll be plying.
Okay, so one will think that this is going to be a major work that will be done. And I'm beginning to wonder how much will it cost and who's funding it?
Well, it's not major work because everything is in the air.
Yeah.
The station on the ground, for example, is no bigger than any big business facility. In other words, the footprint of any big business. It's no bigger than that. And everything else is in the air, apart from the towers. And the base of a tower is half the size of a plot of land, so it's not affecting anybody, we're not disrupting anything. And the total project cost is about $500 million US. So depending on the exchange rate, you're looking at about 81 billion naira. And the funding, the debt financing, is from the African Development Bank, and the equity is from Doppelmayr. I just mentioned Doppelmayr earlier on, the technology provider.
So they are interested. So when are you looking to launch? Where are you starting from? Have you started at all?
When you say launch, do you mean groundbreaking or commencement of construction or
Commencement
operation?
of service, operation?
Commencement
Yes.
of 2015, early 2015. The first phase will be complete.
Okay.
Now, we believe that cable cars run on electricity. Is that true or false?
They run on electricity.
Okay.
But your definition of electricity presumably is PHCN.
Well, I was getting to PHCN.
So what will be your source of electricity?
Our source of electricity is going to be gas and diesel.
Okay.
But we have an advantage in Lagos, in that Lagos has an IPP on the island. So we can tap into the IPP. And that IPP in itself is powered by gas. So you're talking reliable power supply.
So you're not looking to generate your own power?
No, we're not going to generate our own power. We'll buy
It
it.
will be distributed
It-
to
And
you.
you're not depending on PHCN
No.
in any way.
No, there's
Because
no
I'm sure
connection.
people who are watching now are going to be PHCN. Suppose we're in the cable car and
Yes.
then power suddenly decides to.
Yeah, no. No, we guarantee you the operational 99.8% operational reliability, because it's a 5-point source of power. You have, for example, an IPP on the island for the operations on the island. Those that are not on the island will be gas. Then you have a diesel, and they're turbines, they're not generators. So the turbines are running all day long, but offload. And then you've got 2 inverters, or you've got an inverter system that provides power for about 30 minutes, backup power. So you have 5 sources of power. So in terms of redundancy, it's unlikely.
They can't
Okay.
all break down. at
They
the
can't
same
all
time.
break down at the
Right
same
down.
time.
Okay, so a lot of people have issues with anything that's in the air or on water, because you kind of like don't feel like you're well grounded.
Yes.
You're not in control of it.
Yeah.
So safety becomes a major issue.
Sure.
How safe will it be? What are the safety regulations or procedures and processes that you look to put in place to make it such that it becomes compelling that this will be very safe?
Well, again, look, I've come from 30 years of aviation, And you know all about the plane crashes around the world. So how come you still fly? On the one hand. You talk about safety. Do you know how many people die weekly on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway alone? I'm not talking about other roads in the country. I'm just narrowing you down to one road. So in terms of safety, you're not going to have anything remotely close to that. And don't forget, with the cable car system, it is statistically 20,000 times safer than being in a vehicle. Why? Because you're above mixed traffic. Accidents happen because something hits something. It's because a car hits a pedestrian. It's because a bus hits a car. It's because a car crossing a railway track hits the train, or the train hits the car. They don't just crash by themselves.
So a cable car can hit a cable car?
No, because they're all going in the same direction.
But they're on different cables?
They're on different cables separated by about 20 meters. About 20 meters.
So not a chance.
And they're not coming head on. They're always operating in a continuous loop system. So they're not conflicting with each other. So like I said, because you're above the mixed traffic, you have no conflict. Therefore, you can't have an accident unless somebody wants to do something deliberate. But that would be a sabotage issue rather than a safety issue.
A bomb.
Well, you won't get a bomb in there because, you see, a station, a typical cable car, urban cable car system station, is very akin to an airport terminal in the developed world. You know, the security you go through in an airport, you don't see a lot of it. The obvious ones you see, you know, when they're swiping you down and you walk through the archway, take off your shoes, take off your glasses and all that. But you've been walking in between metal plates that you didn't realize because it looks like a wall of a room. And when you walk between those plates, you can actually see right through you and see what you're carrying, whether it's metal objects and things like that. We'll have the same things. So you're not going to, it's not the type that undresses you.
So it's not that bad.
Not
Okay.
that one.
Now, still on the issue of safety,
Yeah.
how high will the cable cars be, and what are the chances that it might affect buildings and infrastructure in those areas? Or the issue of airplanes? It's not going to be as high as affecting airplanes and
No.
helicopters.
Well, I'll answer the first question. In terms of buildings, with cable cars, you can operate in between buildings, you can operate on top of buildings, you can operate through buildings. In some countries, they have the cable car station in a building, in a skyscraper, on the 20th floor or something. So you can have that scenario. So buildings and obstructions like that are not of any consequence. And that's the advantage of a cable car, because you can use it to go over the Apapa port, over the channel, over the water, whereas you'd have to build a bridge otherwise. In terms of aviation, it doesn't conflict with aviation at all. And I'll explain, because I explained that we have one station in Ijora, 7-Up, and another one in Apapa. That's as far west as we're going. The MMIA airport is further west than that. So the departure path of an aircraft from the airport, it's like a cone, you know, a funnel when you're filling water into a jerry can. It's like a funnel. Imagine the funnel at the airport and it's going out at the end of the runway like that. So an aircraft has to be within that cone, and the cone gets wider and wider. And even at the widest part, we're still out of it. And in terms of an aircraft taking off or landing and has an emergency and has to come back and land, they'd be at about 460, let's say 500 meters. Okay? Now, the towers for the cable car are they range in height depending on your location, but about 120 meters. So if the highest tower is 120 meters and the lowest aircraft is 500 meters, you're 5 times lower than they are. So it's not within their airspace at all.
Okay, I'm sorry I still have to dwell on safety, because it will be a major thing to find these cable cars flying routes in the air around Lagos is still a dream.
Yes.
But bringing that dream home, in terms of things like thunderstorms and other
Lightning.
natural things that could affect it, how do you want to make sure that these do not create a natural disaster?
There are only 2 things that can stop a cable car from operating. One is earthquake. Only way you can design the tower to withstand earthquakes. After all, the whole of Japan is earthquake terrain, and they have all their skyscrapers, but you can design your foundation to take that into consideration. And the other one, and we don't have earthquakes in Lagos.
Thank God for that.
We have enough. And the other one, of course, is wind. Now, these cabins are designed to withstand winds of up to 110 kilometers per hour. But let's put that in perspective, because 110 kilometers per hour is just a figure, just a number.
Will you go as far as 100 kilometers?
The distance of the route?
Yes.
No, it's just about 12 kilometers.
12
the total
kilometers.
network.
Okay.
But in terms of the
12
wind,
kilometers round trip or
no, 12 kilometers is the
one
total
way?
network one way.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
If you don't get off at any station from one end to the other. So remember the storm we had in Lagos, February 2012, where the billboards came down and everything came crashing down and the world came to an end. The wind was only, the peak wind, recorded wind, was 67 kilometers per hour. So if I'm saying that those weather conditions that brought down billboards and so on, trees, was 60 kilometers per hour, and we can withstand in a cable car 100 kilometers per hour, it shows you that there's no problem. Not that we're going to operate in winds of 100 kilometers per hour, but it means that even when we drop you off in the station and we shut down the system because the storm is coming, the cabins in the air will not be parked because they're okay up there. So from a natural phenomenon, you don't have anything to worry about in that regard. In terms of lightning, don't forget that it's the equivalent of a Faraday's cage. That's why when an aircraft is struck by lightning, you don't all get electrocuted and die because you're in a Faraday's cage. But when you're in the cabin, you're connected to the cables, and the cables are connected to the saddles on the top of the towers, and from there it goes down the trusses down into the ground.
So the earthing.
It's earthed.
Yes.
So even if lightning struck the cabin, which it wouldn't, because remember the cabin is not the highest obstacle. It's not the highest object within the point at which the lightning is striking. It's going to strike the tower, and the tower has its own lightning conductors. So that will dissipate the energy.
Okay.
Let's talk about the fares now. People will be thinking, okay, this is new technology. It's got to be expensive to put up. So how much are we going to have to pay to ride in these cable cars?
Well,
we want to do that quick journey
yes.
from Apapa to Adeniyi Adele.
Well, it's only going to be 4 minutes from Apapa to Adeniyi Adele.
That quick?
Yes.
It makes how many kilometers?
It's doing 40 kilometers per hour, but because it's going over the water, you're not going around from Apapa all the way around Ijora, Ido.
On the bridges.
So, and remember, you're above the mixed traffic, so it's just a 4-minute ride. From Adeniyi Adele to Victoria Island is 12 minutes. So if you're going from Victoria Island to Ido, for example, it would just be a 20-minute ride, and you're there. And then you get onto the heavy rail. Now, in terms of cost, it's affordable to everybody. It's just another form of transport. This is what Governor Fashola has stressed. He wants to have as many modes of transport in Lagos that can alleviate the hardship of the commuting public. That's all. And this is just another form of transport. If we made it elitist, then that's great. Then we have people wearing suits, sitting in there, having champagne and so on. But when they get to the station, how do they get to their office?
They'd walk.
They'd have to walk. So no, it's affordable to all. It's meant to be a scenario whereby you say, should I go in a taxi? Should I go in a bus, BRT? Should I go on the light rail? Or should I go on the cable car? It depends where you're going to, that you'll determine that.
Okay, now in terms of the economics,
it's a mass urban transport system, completely.
So how cost effective will the cable cars be when you look at it as a system of mass transit? It's actually, well, look, if I say how efficient it is, then everybody else is going to start building cable cars. But it's very, very efficient.
What's wrong with